This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
This is the property committee meeting of February 25th, 2026, 6:45 p.m. We'll take attendance, roll call. An announcer here. Here. All right, all the members are here. We do have minutes that were promptly submitted by Councilor McQuaid. Did everybody have a chance to check over? These minutes were in the form of Google Meet for the most part, it looks like, which is new to our city council, kind of. We didn't have any votes, as I recall, so there was nothing to formally record. I think it just gives a decent summarization. Anyone else care to comment on that?
It's good. I'll also say I went through, I used Google Meet as a template, but I did rewatch the meeting.
Yeah.
Format everything properly.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. I'd make a motion to approve.
So second.
Motion a second to approve the minutes. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Public speak. Anyone here from the public who cares to make comments? As a member of the public, no one in the room, no one online. That being said, move right on to business. The town lodging house referral for disposition. We had received a copy of a proposed RFP, and I presume Michael's here and ready to answer any questions. Do we have any?
Yeah,
anything else to report on that?
Yeah, the draft RFP was emailed to you last week. I want to thank Allison for her time in editing this latest draft. I think the most important parts of this, this is just a point to start discussions, but is the minimum criteria for consideration and the comparative evaluation criteria. That's really what's going to tell the tale in terms of the RFP issuing it and what type of responses we get back and what our expectations are.
Did anyone have initial questions on the subject?
So did committee members get a chance to read through this prior to the meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. So starting on page 3, again, we have the minimum criteria and the comparative evaluation criteria. Did you want me to talk about that, run through these at all?
I think it helps to go ahead and do that.
Okay, so minimum criteria, we've asked for a proposal that will include all of the required forms required by the RFP. The proposal should include a plan for compliance with 3 deed restrictions. Proposal shall include a statement of public benefit for the proposed use of the property. The proposal shall include some satisfactory references, and the proposal shall include a business plan with detailed financial pro forma, projected multi-year revenue, cash flow, and expenses. Those are the minimum criteria for consideration. Comparative evaluation criteria. Now, these are the criteria that any review committee or person reviewing the proposals would then rank. They're not going to be ranked in numerical order, but they're ranked as highly advantageous, advantageous, not acceptable, and not advantageous. So the first we have is a public benefit of the proposal. Now, the public benefit can really mean a lot of things. And I would encourage the committee to look at the language that follows after this public benefit and what we're describing as highly advantageous or advantageous. Then I'm going to move on to the second one. Proposals plan to renovate and we use the property in compliance with the 3 property deed restrictions. The third, the proposal's financial feasibility and viability of their business plan. 4, the project timing. These are all areas for consideration by the committee. Again, I would ask you to take a close look at how we are defining these comparative evaluation criteria. Make sure you're comfortable with the language that's in there, and then we can move forward from there. The other document that I sent you was a sample purchase and sale agreement. A contract of that sort will need to be included in the RFP as an example of what we will be asking the successful proposer to execute at some point in the future. I believe that all the other documents that we're going to reference in this RFP as supporting documentation will be online. The city has a great website. Allison's planning website has a lodging house tab, and all of the items that would be relevant to this RFP will be located on that tab and available for anyone to click on, download, and review. So I'd be looking for feedback from the property committee at this point in time. You may or may not be prepared to give me that feedback, myself and Allison, right now. But I would ask you to start thinking about, again, how we've defined, how we've outlined the comparative evaluation criteria, and how we have defined the ranked categories of highly advantageous, not advantageous, or not acceptable, I believe.
It was the category, not
Yeah,
acceptable.
unacceptable or not acceptable.
Right.
And of course, the process, as I've talked about before, this RFP will be on the street for, I believe, 30 days because of the size of the property. We'll see what we get for responses. We really will not know what we'll get for responses until we cast, this wide net we're throwing out. Lots of negotiation can be done after the top ranked proposer is selected. Again, we come back to the comparative evaluation criteria, what they've told us their plans are going to be, and then we work that out in writing in a purchase and sale agreement.
So it sounds like you had foreseen a role for the property committee.
Well, as we discussed a few meetings ago, both myself and Allison have talked with the mayor about this, and he is comfortable having this property committee, meaning you 3 folks, be involved in putting this RFP together with staff assistance, of course. But unlike the 3 school buildings, the mayor is not interested in naming a larger group of folks. I think there were 12 or 14 people in that larger group. This is a much smaller project, we know, when compared to the 3 schools. We also believe that the pool of applicants or proposers is a lot smaller than what the city saw for the 3 schools. And that's, I think, I don't want to speak for the mayor, but I think that is the rationale that the city has approached this with.
I think to have council input in the process is much appreciated from the council perspective. I think the property committee would certainly be up to that as a process. I see nodding of heads here, so I think that makes sense. I like or appreciate the logic of. I think the reason to have 12 or so people in the previous committee for the 3 schools, there were 3 different locations. There were different populations that were involved, the neighborhoods, neighbors, different interests, different uses of the buildings. So that made some additional sense, I think.
Yeah, and of course the caveat is that property committee will take their recommendation to the full city council for a vote on disposition of the property.
So where do you see disposition in the process? So,
You know, with the school building, that was, you know, the city had to get possession of those properties prior to going out.
from the city side had to get
Yeah,
possession.
so the school had to declare them surplus
Surplus, right.
and turn them over to the city. The city then had to declare them surplus and available for disposition.
Right.
You can pretty much do the same thing without those added steps. You know, you have the authority to do a property council resolution declaring it surplus. You know, just as outlined in the materials I provided to the committee members right out of the chapter 30B handbook. Again, if we're not going to ask for, well, if our bottom line isn't the price of the property, if that is not our only consideration, and the city is going to consider taking less than market value, we need to say that in the RFP, and we have to determine the public benefit that you're choosing to undertake that justifies not getting market rate for it. All outlined in those 12 or 13 pages, 16 pages from the handbook. We can get into that a little further if you want tonight.
Depends how far we go. Councilor Beak?
I do have a question, but Allison's had her digital handout.
I did not notice that. I apologize. Please feel free to break in and say, hey, Dee. Go ahead. We cannot hear you.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. I just wanted to add that I had made a revision to the RFP that didn't make its way to you. I didn't want to cause confusion, but one of the comparative evaluative criteria that I would suggest is timing and how quickly a developer is proposing to rehab the property and put it back into use. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I know Michael went through some of the criteria, but that was not in the draft that he's got. So
Actually, I missed that number 4 item. It is in here.
You named timing, but it isn't in the draft from last
Oh, it
week.
is in the draft. It's in the draft I have in front of me.
Yeah, so you pointed it out. I noticed
Okay.
that wasn't
All right.
there. But
okay.
Thank you.
And I did correct a couple typos. I think I put unacceptable instead of not acceptable by accident in a place. So I do have a revised version that's a little bit cleaner, but that was all I wanted to add. Sorry.
Thank you.
now I do have a question.
And okay, go ahead.
So this was my first time doing one of these. Just if this is overly persnickety, that is a thing that I sometimes do.
There are no
okay.
sticky questions.
So
We all like your good questions.
I don't know about that, but it says so. Let's just take the public benefit of the proposal one,
Yes.
for example. For highly advantageous, it says a proposal that integrates vulnerable communities or underserved communities in the reuse of the property, creates partnerships with other organizations in the city, includes significant investments in the future of the property through capital investment, and adds value to the neighborhood shall be highly advantageous. Now it goes to the next one. A proposal that includes engagement with the community, is compatible with and complementary to the neighborhood, and includes modest investments in the future property through capital improvements shall be advantageous.
Mhm.
Now, the thing is that these are independent variables, right? So you could have, what if you have a property that integrates vulnerable or underserved communities in the reuse of the property, creates partnerships with other organizations in the city, but only has modest investment. The idea is that you could have something that maybe has really great capital improvement, but is less compatible with the neighborhood than another one is very compatible with the neighborhood, but has only not quite the sort of capital improvements you'd want to see.
Sure.
And so at that point, if these are, I guess what I'm wondering is since these things are independent of one another, should the benefit to vulnerable or underserved communities, the compatibility with the neighborhood and the level of capital improvement be broken out into three separate categories, since you could have, I just don't know. I'm just imagining scoring this, and what do I do if there's one that I really like one of those aspects, but the other one's a little underwhelming? Like, how do I score that? And if this is something that frequently happens with RFPs, and there's just like a best practice for this, then just let me know.
You can have as many evaluation categories as you like. I would suggest that you not expand it to more than 4 or 5. You'll have to use your own judgment based on, we don't have anything in front of us at this point. After we cast the net, we'll see what we have in front of us, but it's a difficult question to ask and to answer. You just need to see what we get. Quite frankly, I don't know what else to tell you.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting.
I mean, if we want separate categories for underserved communities, investment, we can do that.
I just think that might be, like, I'm not suggesting adding any criteria that isn't already part of this, but I'm just saying that there are several kind of independent factors that are being lumped into a single criteria.
Mhm.
And for judging purposes, it to me might be helpful if we had a chance to grade each of those on its own merits.
So Tom, I had that kind of thought myself while I was working on it, of like how to how to format it really. My concern or challenge when I was working on it was that if you isolate them out, say, works with vulnerable populations, what is the qualitative difference from highly advantageous to not acceptable within just the confines of works with vulnerable populations? Like, are we saying one vulnerable population is more advantageous than another? So that was kind of where I got hung up on it, I guess.
I wouldn't say necessarily that one is more advantageous than another, but that, like, it wouldn't be acceptable to me if it's like actively bad for vulnerable populations. It would be, not advantageous if it really didn't do anything for them. It would be advantageous if it had some modest benefit for vulnerable populations. And it'd be highly advantageous if it showed like substantial benefits. Just sort of spitballing here. Like, I mean, the other way that I think we could do this is to just replace and with and/or and say, these are the sorts of things we're looking for in a public benefit. But the idea is, like, I'm just wondering, like, this could be me being pedantic, but like, is what do we do if we've got these criteria and something comes in and I really, really like one of these factors, but then some of the other ones are a little underwhelming. How do I grade that?
Yeah, I sort of feel similarly, because I mean, I think that there can be some internal tension within even just that, like, 1A. Like, what someone might say qualitatively adds to the value of the neighborhood, to some people might actually put at risk vulnerable populations. So, like, I think that there's a way that maybe we could break these out into groups that make more sense, like vulnerable populations and partnerships with community organizations, and then like adding value and capital improvements being one thing. But yeah, I sort of agree that it feels hard to score based on that very all-inclusive definition of public benefit.
So that's my that's just one suggestion. I'm happy to be talked out of this, but would be to at least give it. I mean, I feel like, yeah, that is just my one thing, is just where the semicolons are in this. Like, maybe if those were their own categories, it would just allow us to score it a little bit more easily. Just my thought.
I'm rolling through my head just two variables, capital improvements and how someone comes in and says, geez, we're gonna spend $100 million there. Okay, sounds great. That's a lot more than spending $5 million. We're gonna give you points. Is it realistic? How would you spend, where would you, are you, where's your financial stack? How is this all gonna line up? Is this really a real proposal? Or is somebody just giving us a line? So how do you then rate that criteria? I don't know. Let's say somebody comes in and says, well, we're gonna spend $20 million, or we're gonna spend 10. I wouldn't know how to begin to really evaluate that, except that, yeah, I suppose you'd have to look at their individual proposal and really delve into the nitty gritty of that proposal in order to make that evaluation.
And that's criteria 5, isn't it? The proposal shall include a business plan, including detailed financial.
So it's there, it's there in terms of the business plan for the capital improvement, the business plan for operational.
The financial feasibility, viability of the business plan is number 3 on the comparative evaluation criteria.
Oh.
A minimum requirement is that they have a business plan.
Okay, yep, there it is. So, right, so I think if somebody says, hey, we're gonna give you $1 billion to build a whatever, like, okay, great, but if that's not viable, then that
doesn't make sense, and we have to make that kind of as a quality.
Yeah. And that's, I think, where we have to lean on city staff a little bit to, get their take on, does this sound like something that could actually happen?
Right. Vulnerable population, how do you define, pit one population against another? I don't know.
I think
we're looking
Can I jump in that real quick?
Sure,
I'll
absolutely.
just respond to that. When I'm talking about this, like, I am, what I want to make it 100% clear that I'm not suggesting is that we say helping these vulnerable populations is very advantageous. Helping these populations is slightly advantageous. I don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole, and neither should anybody else. What I'm simply suggesting is that, like, when I'm looking at these criteria, I could say, oh, well, so here's this proposal, the proposal that that we've seen from the Farmer Veterans Alliance, for example. Like, I can look at that and I can say, okay, veterans who are going through some stuff, like, that's certainly a vulnerable population, and here's their proposal, and it looks to me as a reviewer like this could be a very advantageous thing for those people, versus perhaps a second proposal comes along that says, hey, we want to do something really cool that historically preserves the building, yada, 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 but it doesn't have, like, that's just not, it doesn't really have, like, a specific population in mind. Or they say, you know what, after this affordable housing restriction is up, we're going to turn it into condos, and, like, okay, well, then I would rank the one that says they're going to help out these people. I would rank that higher, but I certainly am not at all interested in talking about saying this population is more important than another. What I'm saying is, for a public good, if they can identify a population that's going to be helped by this, whether that's veterans, whether that's victims of domestic violence, whether that's low-income people with disabilities, like, whatever it wants to be, that is a plus to me, because if we're giving this away for less than the market rate, then I think that I'd like to see it go to help people who need help. But there's all sorts of different people, and there's different levels of suitability for helping various people with a very unique property like this.
Different levels of support, because there are projects that do wraparound services or, like, job training, or, and then there are properties that just are targeting certain populations for occupancy versus not. So I think that there's a way to scale it based on that sort of thing, rather than, like, which populations, or, like, I don't know if I'm understanding your.
I think we understand each other.
So I'm hearing you'd like to see that split up then.
I think that could be helpful. Either that, or the simpler way to do it, I think. I mean, which I think would maybe be like not as good, but would be fine with me, is if just where it says and, we replace it with and or, which is to say at that point, because what if it's and or, then at least I can say, well, I've got a property that I think is highly advantageous on this out of these, we've got 3 or 4 different criteria within this public benefit here. If I say, look, I think this one proposed criteria is great on these 2 things, but it's kind of underwhelming on this one other thing, then maybe I just call it advantageous. Like, I'm just wondering how splitting it up would be one way to do it. I'm just trying to figure out what I do if I'm supposed to evaluate the public benefit of a project and there's multiple criteria that we're establishing here, and it's not guaranteed that I'm going to feel the same way on a given proposal about each of them. Do I take an average?
It's got to be understood, though, that if you are going to serve vulnerable or underserved communities at that location, that house needs significant investment.
Sure.
That goes hand in hand.
But
one goes just with the other.
Say, I'm just going to throw this out there as a hypothetical, right? Like, one of the things that we're talking about here is the use that is compatible and complementary with the neighborhood, right? So you could potentially be dealing with certain populations, and there are residential sites that work with certain populations. I'm not going to point them out, but I think we can get, recently incarcerated people. Let's bring that, just as an example, right? You could say, you could have a program that was massively helpful and beneficial to recently incarcerated people who I think we would all agree are a vulnerable population, but some people in the neighborhood might not be incredibly excited about that. And so you could say, there's a feeling that this isn't incredibly compatible with the neighborhood, and yet it's massively helpful to people who are certainly a vulnerable population. So that's where I think it's true that for the capital investment side, but you could also have a project that has a fantastic capital investment and does little to nothing for vulnerable people.
How would that work? But they wouldn't score high, they wouldn't get awarded.
Well, sure, but they wouldn't score, but if they have a significant investments in the future of the property,
but they're not serving a vulnerable population, they wouldn't score well and we wouldn't award it to them.
So I have a suggestion, and sort of a question for you, Michael. What if we separated out the vulnerable population piece, and rather than breaking it down into 4 different possible ratings, it's either you do or you don't. So it's advantageous or not advantageous, as opposed to 4 possible rankings. Is that, I feel like I've seen that in proposals. Obviously, it's.
We can do it any way the committee likes. I would caution on
rather than us trying to articulate in a document 4 different levels of vulnerable population incorporation. I feel like I would be challenged to do that.
I mean, I think your suggestion makes a lot of sense to me. I think that it's sort of like a icing on top of a good project is that it's serving a vulnerable population, and like the way that you phrase it, I think does that with those categories.
I've got my virtual hand up, JP, taking your thing. Can I offer just a comment?
Go ahead.
Now, obviously, I'm sitting in a potential proposal developers role, so I'm trying not to state an opinion on one way or the other, just offer something from experience in doing state level procurements. When you break it down into 4 categories, then you also need, or separate categories if you do that approach. And Tom, by the way, I completely understand your issue. And then, realize it's challenging in either way. But if you all break it down, then you have to think about the weighting. Is vulnerable population more important or as important as investment? And so you just have to start discussing the weightings of each of those categories too, if you break it down. Just a thought to continue for your discussion.
I mean, the other way that we could do it is to just say the public benefit of the proposal is it's a highly advantageous if it features one or more of the following characteristics, right? Like, so that right now, it's saying it's giving, integrates vulnerable underscore, that's one, creates partnership with other organizations in the city, that's two. There's four different like sort of things that could make something. And so I guess what I'm just asking is, these are like for highly advantageous. If I'm going to call something highly advantageous, does it need to feature all four of these? Or is it okay if it just features one or two and the other ones like, or that's I guess what I'm actually asking is like, in order for me to call this highly advantageous, does it need to meet all four of these? And if not, then it's merely advantageous or not advantageous or even not acceptable. Because if so, that's completely fine with me. I just want to make sure that when it comes time to do this, that I understand my assignment.
Good questions. How would our staff respond to that?
Whichever category you feel like with your discretion is most appropriate. Like, if it's, it is very subjective criteria.
Yes, I mean, this is not an objective evaluation. It's a subjective evaluation. You certainly have to accept that right off the bat.
I understand that, but I am.
And if the committee wants to break out investments in the property as a subset or another category of public benefit, we can do that. Again, I'd refer you back to the guidance that the Inspector General provides us. Real property dispositions to promote a public purpose. I believe that's what we're going to do here, because we're not asking for the highest amount of money we can get from the property. So we're going to place some restrictions on this property to be used for low-income training programs for vulnerable populations, affordable housing. So I would just, this all kind of is integrated together. But we can, whatever you'd like to do. You tell us what you want to do. You want to remove the investment piece and make that a separate evaluation category? We could do that for you.
So I just clarify why I'm being annoying about this.
Please.
Or if you want to get a hold of this document in Word format and do some wordsmithing to the way it's been written, I mean, that's fine with us too.
If you could send me a Word document of this, I could create two different ideas about how to deal with this.
And it's for your discussion.
Yes.
It's not, we're here to support you.
I understand that.
It is the property committee's responsibility to go through this. I'm just here for technical assistance
And
guidance.
just to clarify, because I was about to say, it's like, as elected officials, we're going to have to make a decision on this.
You will.
Ultimately, the decision that we make will probably not be popular with 100% of the city. And so
decisions are
because they never are.
Please everybody.
And so when that happens, I would like to be able to say, I followed the criteria. And if they say, well, there was this other proposal that I really liked and it added value to the neighborhoods, but did nothing for.
I completely understand.
So why didn't you put it highly advantageous? Because it added value to the neighborhood. I want to be able to say, no. For you to get highly advantageous, you need to hit all four, unless that's not true.
Mhm.
So I could, if you give me a Word document version of this, I can come up with two different ideas on how to get me past this, and
Sure.
then we can decide
I
which one we
understand,
like.
yeah.
But that's just my thing, is like, I want us to be able to say, these are the rules and we're playing by them. Because it makes it easier for me to say, I mean, that's all I think. I'm done talking about this. I appreciate that I've taken up a long time. I can absolutely look at a couple different ways to do it, and we can decide which one feels better. If you guys are comfortable with that.
And if I can just, I am, but if I can just add, I think just to clarify where my sticking point is, I think for me, there's two pieces to this policy, or there's like a tension in this policy where I think it's trying to encourage sort of a protection of the status quo in some sense of like the community character, the making sure that for whatever development is advantageous to like the tax rolls of the city and like the surrounding property values, the value of the neighborhood as it mentions. And then there's the equity piece of like, is this expanding access to underserved populations? And I think that while I definitely am someone who values the latter really highly and thinks that that should be highly advantageous, I do think that in comparison of multiple proposals, that should be something that can be distinguished and compared. So that's sort of where I'm at. I just think that like equity piece needs to be a little bit split off from the protection of the status quo, protection of property values, financial benefit to the city kind of stuff. But that's just sort of how I'm seeing it and thinking about it.
The way I'm thinking about it, with regard to your two issues that you mentioned here, is I see the status quo as being what was done before was an underserved population being served for 125 years or so. And a continuation of that service in ways similar to the way the service had been provided in kind of the same scale, the same, somewhat the same formats, newer formats, different formats, but kind of the same. And that was preserving the character and what I see as the community character, not necessarily the residential values in the neighborhood or anything other items that you're mentioning, but just the concept of a town farm kind of concept. And that has value to me, and I think it has value to the residents in the neighborhood who have lived there for varying lengths of time, from 1 year to been there their whole lives. I think you find that is the local consensus. How do we quantify that? I'm not sure we quantify it, but I see it wrapped up in the way it's currently phrased.
Well, and I also think
And
that's
I think that covers it. I see your points of view, however.
Well, I also think that what you're mentioning is captured in like number 2 when it really dives into the specific restrictions and like how the proposal would respect and preserve and significantly enhance the architecture and historic materials. Like that, I think is really well written, and I'm happy with the way that gives us the ability to sort of score. But I think my concern was just like I mentioned, the tension between when it says capital improvements adds value to the neighborhood, complementary to the neighborhood. I think that sometimes that can be pitched against the equity of serving underserved populations. That like the situation that Tom mentioned about like potential, recently incarcerated people. Like to some people that might hurt their property. Like they might see that as hurting their property values in their neighborhood. Or, that's not necessarily the position that I would take, but like I just think that when we're making the decision, like Councilor Peake said, having the guidelines distinguished and distinct would make me feel more comfortable.
I think it's worth pursuing.
Okay.
So,
I'm happy to take a shot at it, and we can take it from there. I really appreciate everyone's patience through what has probably been kind of an annoying conversation, but it's important to me to get this right.
I appreciate your
assuming we're going to get two proposals.
Yeah,
which is like,
you're the folks that are gonna have to vote on this. You're gonna have to present this to the full committee, so I don't have any issues at all with getting this to a point where you are all comfortable with it.
Okay.
So I'm going to get you the version I have in front of me, the most recent version that it was edited by Allison. You'll have that in the morning. I'm not
Okay.
gonna do it now because
No, go.
it's been a long day. I want to make sure I get you the right version.
Totally.
Another question that I had.
Along the same subject lines or different?
Well, it's related to the RFP, but I don't know if,
Cause I had some other things outside of the RFP, had parts of the RFP. Go ahead.
okay. I just know we talked about in the last meeting about a pilot potentially being a part of the RFP.
Right,
Is that something that,
that's something that I didn't see in the proposal.
yeah, it was left out of the
That
draft.
one-
I didn't know. I'm not personally attached to it. I'm just bringing it up because it was something we talked at length
Something
about
we
during the last
talked
meeting.
about, right. And so I wanted to bring it up and see, I think the more we get into the pilot, how do we define it? How do we value it? How do we value the property? At what level how does that fit to the financial stack of anybody who's going to do the kind of renovations that we're talking about? Are we really out of line not out of line, but out of the realm of possibility that someone would pay 100%, 50%, 25%, 10%, pay something for getting a property below market value? And that's the level where I think a pilot kind of fits in. Not a pilot, but a contribution to the city. For example, we rent the property now. There's minimal income. Okay, what is the rental value that's pegged by the appraisal? If we're going to sell something for less than market value, we're going to get a public benefit. Does it make sense to have part of the public benefit be a small remuneration of sorts that we can say, okay, yeah, there is a small remuneration on the order of what it would be to rent the property, that we were actually giving up the rent in the property. What do we, less than $1,000 a year now?
We haven't
Tomorrow,
gotten
yeah.
rent down there in at least 5 years.
Yeah, so we haven't touched it, but you know, if you speak to the value that the appraisal says, maybe it makes sense to have something along those lines. I was going to ask in conjunction with that. It's a little tangential, but the community gardens that are next door. And that brought up the subject of they're contiguous to this parcel. Community gardens, I believe, along Park Hill Road. So that such that is there an expansion that the community gardens would be looking for? I know you were checking with various departments.
Certainly speaks to, you know, the engagement piece of this. Creates partnerships with other organizations in the city.
Right. And one of the
Engagement with the
one of the things
community.
we might consider valuable would be to have available space for community gardens at that portion. It would be in conjunction, probably with the existing community gardens. There's so many plots. If I can't imagine much space to create another 10 plots, say. You're not talking an acre, you're talking probably quarter acre, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know what the logistics of something like that would be in the context of all of the deed restrictions on this property, but.
Well, if it's agricultural land, my presumption is that if it's used for community gardens and the public gets to use the gardens, and that's the purpose that fits within the purpose of community gardens, of agricultural preservation, the public would be feeding themselves by utilizing the gardens. Anyone who was a resident of the city would have access to those gardens. So I don't think we'd be a stray of agricultural preservation restrictions. But I don't know what the progress was on all contacting various departments, about any interest in the parcel. I thought that was something.
There's no city department that's interested in this property now,
Right,
not that I'm aware of.
right.
Yeah,
And
no,
we were,
I
we were
just
gonna
think
be
the
looking to
No, we're
document.
trying to get rid
we
of this
were- we
property.
were
This is
looking
a-
to- we were
This is a
looking to-
white elephant
I
for
know, but
us.
we were looking to
really
get
need to,
documentation. on
need
that.
to, we're trying to dispose of this property.
Yeah, no, I think what Chair Kwasinski was referring to is just like in the process of before we can vote to have this property be surplus and ready for disposition.
We have a letter
We were-
from you.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure that there was documentation of us putting it out to the
Putting
rest of the
Putting an
city.
email out to the departments and they formally say, no, we have no interest.
You can certainly do
I know
that.
we
Yeah.
can guarantee that, but
Yeah. No, that would
I
come
was
from you
actually-
as the chairman of the property committee, not from me. I can't offer this property to any department head.
no, but you could ask the departments as we,
Mayor wants to get rid of this property. If you want to reach out to departments, you can feel free to, but I know the answer you're gonna get.
thought that with the documents that you sent us from the chapter on selling property, there has to be a process where you reach out.
You
to
can
the-
declare it surplus and available for disposition. It is surplus right now. You can feel free to email every department head in the city, but no one is interested in this property. This is why we're putting together an RFP.
Okay, I guess the confusion is, or at least for me, and
Yeah,
correct me if I'm wrong.
thank you.
like, Can we declare it surplus before, like, is us declaring it surplus and ready for disposition, is that the procedural piece that happens before we?
Yes,
Okay,
that happens
clarifies.
before you issue the RFP.
and it would also happen before any department heads or anyone would express.
Again,
interest.
you can ask every department head in the city. No one's gonna we are trying to get rid of this property.
Okay, but my
we-
question
we
is
don't-
just like
we don't-
order of operations wise, like, is us.
Considering all the restrictions that are placed on this property. Historic preservation restriction, affordable housing restriction, agricultural preservation restriction. There is no city department that wants this property. We are trying to dispose of it.
Yeah.
This is our goal here.
No,
I just want to add in, I don't think it's common practice for city departments to be offered property when it's being considered for whether or not it's surplus. So it's, if the mayor had wanted to go through those steps, he would have done that. But it's not normally part of like the formal.
I don't think we disagree with that. We just wanted to be sure we dotted our i's and crossed our t's.
Not a
Yeah.
concern.
I just feel
I
like,
can tell you it's not a concern. I know building operations would like to see this property sold tomorrow and taken over by someone else.
I mean, I think that we're all.
I mean, this is a gigantic liability for the city. You understand that we have an obligation to maintain that building?
No, I understand all of
Anything with
that. I think
building
we're all
in
on the
20
same
years,
page.
yeah.
I just felt like the way we were just discussing it yet last meeting led me to believe that there was some sort of
No, with the city's decision is to
step that we needed to take.
Yeah,
dispose of
I-
this property. This
I
is-
also was.
Yeah, no, you guys can just declare it surplus.
Okay.
Yeah, I again, if you want to reach out to department heads and offer this to them, I don't know if that's your
people-
role as the property committee, that's more like the mayor's role, but you're welcome to do that.
Just didn't want to miss a procedural
Okay.
step. That was the reason to bring it up. Things such as purchase price, then typically it would say a number or fair market value, and that doesn't seem to be the sense that we're getting here.
You will have to name a public purpose for this property.
Right, we will
You will,
name-
you will need to place restrictions on it, very similar to the current restrictions that are on the property. Again, those three D
I
restrictions.
understand that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be clear that we were in agreement on not having those words be used. Don't see why we wouldn't be.
What words?
Fair market value, that, or $45,000 or need for another appraisal. I don't see any of that, so I'm comfortable with saying we are comfortable at taking whatever bids there are. And these are the public purposes.
I'm comfortable taking whatever
Yeah.
bids there are.
Yeah.
Personally, like, I don't speak for anybody else, but I'm comfortable taking whatever bids there are.
And I think you can make the public purpose the 3 deed restrictions.
Right.
Those are, those are all serve a public purpose: historic preservation, affordable housing, and agricultural preservation.
How would we view things like, suggestions? I didn't see any language in there for, noting any particular events or being open to the public, in any way, or how,
I mean, if somebody wanted to include something like that, I would certainly count that towards the public good part of the evaluation
Public
criteria.
engagement.
But I don't personally care if they do or not. Like, it's not like that. That's not going to be something that is a deal breaker for me. But if they say, "Hey, we're going to offer a tour once a year because this building is important to your history," I'd say, "Cool." If there's 2 proposals and one of them offers that and the other one doesn't, they're otherwise completely identical. Like, yeah, sure. I don't think that's where we're going to be, but like, I'm sure, like, that would be neat.
Good.
Okay, I have a question about declaring the building surplus, which is that something that we can do out of this current agenda item, or do we need to introduce a surplus resolution as new business? Because if so, we should probably do that tonight.
Good question.
Maybe it's a conversation to have with the mayor. I'm not sure how. It's really up to you guys how you want this to work. You can go to the city council with your full recommendation, declaring surplus available for disposition.
I guess it kind of depends
Public
on,
purpose outlined in the RFP, and then the RFP.
I guess the big question is, let me just even look
I
at
think on our agenda, it's listed as disposition.
Referral for disposition.
Okay, in
Referral
that
for
case,
disposition, so that encompasses any criteria regarding a sale, should we declare the property surplus and make recommendations.
Referral to disposition to the full
Right.
council?
Mhm.
Yes.
so
That
then,
was my understanding.
So that's my understanding.
Okay.
And I don't think we have to take another step by introducing anything else.
okay, and
We can certainly get, a legal opinion if you want.
no, I think that that's fine. It's been a while since this was introduced. In that case, can we start drafting that? Do we have, that resolution or a boilerplate for that? Already?
I don't have that ready, but I can start working on it for you. I mean, again, step 1 would be declaring the property available for disposition
Mhm.
and identify reuse restrictions.
Okay,
So if we're dealing with.
And I would recommend it all be done in one
I think that
Yes.
makes sense.
shot, yeah.
and just for whatever it's worth, I mean, I think I'm ready to, whenever we get the proper language, to declare it. And I would say that I'm sorry, what was the wording on the second side of that? The reuse?
Reuse restrictions.
Reuse restrictions. I would say that the reuse restrictions are broadly that it stays within the 3 existing deed restrictions. I mean, there's obviously there's projects like the one that we've been hearing about that I think even goes a little bit above doing that, but I'm willing to hear out anybody that
The only
actually has a plan.
The only deed restriction there that isn't in perpetuity is the low-income housing
Yes.
requirement.
Right.
That does have an expiration date.
Right.
However, we would anticipate that the proposer would access either historic tax credits or low-income tax credits or some other funding vehicle that would require provision of affordable housing. If you wanted to tackle that and say, hey, in perpetuity, we would like the majority of the units created at this property to be available to persons at 60% or below of median income, you could do that. That would speak to the reuse restrictions
Right.
for a public purpose.
It would seem to me to get that specific might be too tight or restriction, just like it would be tight to say, we want to get X number of dollars. You kind of want to leave it flexible given the various proposal and be able to look at the proposal and say, either it's meeting the substantial need of the underserved population or it's not.
I
I
think
think that becomes the decision as opposed to the specific criteria.
I think we do want to think about long-term preservation of affordable housing. This has always been for 125,
Right.
how many years? It's always been a resource for affordable housing.
Yeah.
And I would think that if you go into the low income tax credits, housing tax credits, you would have at least a 30-year restriction. Is that not
Yes.
correct?
Well, yeah, I can't speak to that. I don't have
Yeah, it's
that kind
usually
of
like
expertise.
15 to 25 years. But I mean, like Heather mentioned at the last meeting, they're not going to use low-income housing tax credits most likely just because of the threshold that the unit threshold for what that usually requires to make projects pencil out. So I mean, I definitely agree with what you were saying about preserving, like using the tools we have to preserve the long-term affordability. Like I know that in the next 10 years or the next 5 years, even the city has the potential of losing almost 60 affordable housing units off of our subsidized housing inventory. So, I mean, I think anything that we can do to keep them from coming off the rolls would be good.
No, if you just say shall be available to person 60 persons, households, I'm not sure how that language works, below 60% of median income, that might provide whoever is going to own this building the amount of flexibility to offer not only that, but do they have down to 30? I wouldn't suggest getting any more specific than that.
I would be comfortable
suppose.
even with 80. I mean,
Yes. As long as there's, and it's your prerogative, not mine. It's up to you guys or the city council property committee about, what they'd like to do about that. But that would be my only suggestion in terms of reuse restrictions for the long term or beyond the horizon.
And I just personally, and it's fine if other people don't see it.
And 80% is certainly, we'll always keep it that way, but it offers whoever may end up with this a lot of flexibility in terms of what they can offer.
I think that what I'm thinking broadly is to just keep it high level because I think that I'd like to see what different people could come up with. I think that I don't know exactly. I'd like to keep it flexible enough that people could propose some different models and that I could, but certainly the model that I choose is going to largely be based on the commitment to affordable housing and the long-term plan and whatever.
And at
And I
a minimum
think
of
we-
80% of median.
Yeah, well, I think we've answered that by looking at the current language. And we will be able to choose among plans. If somebody says, we got a plan that, has X and this plan has Y and X is more serving of economically vulnerable. Does that make sense or not? So that leaves us that flexibility. I don't think we need to be specific in terms of tying down.
I mean, I think that's my question is when we say affordable housing, how are we?
You want to define it in some way.
Yeah, exactly. And usually that's
80%.
using AMI.
It starts at 80% AMI.
Does that mean everyone who visits the property or stays in the property or uses the property?
Well, the housing units,
Yeah, the
or
house,
the household units that are going to reside there.
Yeah, but and so right, and then
Whether that's 60, I think that's,
Can I just jump in real quick? The existing affordable housing restriction specifies the number of units that have to be 80% AMI or emergency housing. So, and to be clear, the city won't be able to sell this property without EOHLC approving the buyer and a new affordable housing restriction.
So doesn't that give us some comfort in knowing that whoever's going to be approved will be approved by the powers that be who control affordable housing at the state level? And that we don't have to be specific in defining that?
I think as long as there's clarity that whomever acquires the property has to comply with the existing affordable housing restriction or as amended by HLC, that covers us.
I'm comfortable with that.
That's fine with me.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with not putting a definition if the definition is covered somewhere else. I just don't want to.
sure.
Well,
The existing restriction is 80% AMI.
but we did talk about a few other things, if we may. That one was the first right of refusal, and I didn't see that in there.
That would be in I just provided you a purchase and sale, very generic. All that would need to be detailed in a purchase and sale.
Okay, I had,
And that's, a lawyer is gonna have to take
yeah.
a shot at that. It's not, it won't be me.
Yeah, I understand. There were some additional thoughts about the language of that I wanted to broach. And that was that maybe the city wouldn't be in a position of the right of refusal. Let's say you had first right, generally you have first right of refusal granted. And on the same terms, let me read what I have. Grantor hereby grants to the municipality a right of first refusal to purchase the property on the same terms and conditions as any bona fide offer received by the grantor. The municipality may assign this right of first refusal to any third party by written notice to the grantor, and any such assignee shall have all rights and obligations of municipality under this provision. So that, let's say the city wasn't in a position to say, yeah, someone is going to invest $6 or $7 million, but this other organization out there was interested in taking over the property, and we could assign the right to purchase to them. I think that's another feature of the first right of refusal that I think would be helpful in giving the city additional flexibility. Any questions? That may not be clear. I'd be happy to try to restate that more succinctly.
No, I'm just confused, but I'll learn more as the conversation keeps going, I think.
Well, yeah. Okay. So I'll leave that language with you as a possibility of inserting at the appropriate point. The other thing was, I'm not quite sure how best to couch this, but it would seem important that the public have a right to know what's going on with the organization, that takes over the management and operation of the facility, because there still will be a public interest. Presumably, they'll want to be receiving additional funds from the city, maybe in the form of Community Preservation Act grants, further funding, and I think it can be a benefit to the city to have an observer on with their local board. Someone who doesn't vote on their whoever the local management authority is for this organization that we're considering, to have some sort of observer, somebody who would be, let's say, appointed by the mayor and approved by the city council to sit, listen, be aware of what's going on, be cognizant of the issues, receive timely notice of those meetings, and just report back to the council and the mayor.
I mean, do we know that the organization involved is going to have a local board?
I would hope they would. I would hope they would have some sort of local management structure.
Sure.
And what I'm asking for is for you to think about that.
I'll think about
The
that.
observer as, serving a I know as the neighborhood, it would be helpful to let the neighborhood be aware in some way. Hopefully the observer would be somebody that would stay in touch with the entire community. Kind of like, we wouldn't want to have something like cultural chaos leaving us, be dropped on us without the none of the nine counselors knowing about it. That's the kind of thinking that I think that would eliminate. We would not have that kind of situation occur. They wouldn't interfere with the management structure, what they do, how they do it, and we would definitely not be partners with somebody, just aware. That being said, is there anything else in the language? All right, so looks like task. Disposition granting, Michael, you were going to work on
Yes.
for a draft for the next meeting and hopefully incorporating the comments that we've had today. You're going to give something to Tom to work on.
Yes.
At our next meeting, we can hopefully button that up with final recommendations. I think we should then set a date.
Sure.
Week Thursday. That's too long. Rob?
It's ordinance committee.
I'm gonna bow out, folks. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you for your
Yeah,
time.
it's good to see you all. I'll watch the city calendar.
All right.
You'll get an email from me shortly.
Thank you.
And, again, thank you.
Okay. The following Thursday, the 19th?
19.
Yeah, the 5th and the 12th are both.
The 19th is CPA. Right, Thursdays are always good to me, except for if it's CPA, but the CPA is meeting twice this coming up.
Tuesday the 17th, I know Tuesdays aren't great for me.
Tuesdays are actually
Tuesdays are absolutely.
There are no for you.
There are no. Monday early is a possibility if necessary,
Like 5:30.
like 5:30.
You could do Monday the 16th at 5:30 or Monday the 9th. Mondays are usually pretty open for me after work. So
yeah, well, yeah, as long as people are understandable that if there's traffic, I might be a couple minutes late. Is the only thing, because I'd be leaving.
Mondays are definitely out of town.
For the rest of until May, I'm in the office. I mean, you can usually leave
5:45, 6.
6 is probably fine.
Monday, 6 o'clock.
do we want to do the 8th, the 15th, 22nd?
Let's do the.
Or no, wait, sorry. The 9th, the 16th, or the 23rd?
Why don't we do that?
Between Tuesdays,
Mondays
Monday.
in March.
Oh yeah.
16?
In any of those could work for me.
16th? All right, cool. So the 16th, at 6 p.m.
Monday the 16th at 6 p.m.
All right. And I can send the minutes to Marianne if that makes sense.
You can send the minutes to Mary Ann.
The approved ones, yeah.
Yeah.
They've been.
All right.
That being said, anything else? Excellent. Make a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. This meeting is adjourned.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.